Office properties are often designed and marketed to fit a particular type of tenant. Customized design of space may make tenant replacement more costly. Many suburban office parks have additional land available for expansion. This means that projects can be built in phases to make sure supply and demand stay in balance. In dense central business districts, this kind of flexibility is rarely available. This is a risk mitigation strategy. Okay, let's talk about some supply-demand drivers for the office building property type. The demand for office space is correlated most closely to projected job growth. In addition, one, demographic, two, societal, and three, technological trends can affect both the amount of space firms need and the type of space. Older buildings are at a disadvantage, particularly in life safety equipment, for example, air handlers and filters, when they're old and don't give a sense of safety, certainly in this post-COVID era. At a local level, both demand and supply can be impacted by tenants' needs or access to customer and suppliers, skilled labor, support service for employees, highways, airports, and reliable public transportation, and parking. Defining the area of competition in the submarket region is a critical first step in understanding property's value. Projected office employment growth is the key driver of office space demand. The demand is based on those who work from the office, and you need to carefully assess the needs of those who are working from home, as there might be some sort of hybrid work involved. Tenant space requirements also affect the design and the type of facility, including average floor area and the number of entrances. The demand for space is affected by multiple factors. For example, industry trends, location, rents, etc. So the last bullet point is a formula that sort of encapsulates projected office demand. So you want to know the number of projected office employees plus the space that they use, or the gross space that they use. This will give you the projected office space demand. Office supply is the basis for estimating rents, concessions, design features, desired amenities, and finishes. The key elements of the supply analysis are an inventory of existing competitive buildings within the market area and projects under construction and in the planning stage. This is sort of called the pipeline. Specific supply side key drivers are vacancy rates, absorption rates, the effect of other planned development in the same market, any barriers to entry, and the effects of potentially and existing competition from other nearby markets. By subtracting the expected supply from the demand for office space, the deficit or surplus of office space for a particular period can be determined. Vacancy levels are an important part of the supply calculation, and the vacancy trends can indicate changes in demand. The absorption time in months of all the vacant space can be calculated as the following. Here's our absorption time. You add the vacant space plus any new construction minus any space that's being demolished or taken off the market, and you divide it by net absorption divided by 12, which is for 12 months. There's really no firm guidelines that exist for determining what exactly constitutes a good market or a soft market. A couple of rules of thumb, again, these are guidelines, are that a market with fewer than 12 months of inventory is considered a strong market. A market with anywhere between 12 and 24 months is sort of a normal market. And anything that has more than 24 months of inventory is a soft market. So now let's talk about a couple of lease considerations that are specific to the office property type. Due to the long length of most leases, the current rent paid is usually different from what the market rent is. An important distinction in office market analysis is the difference between what the quoted rent is and the effective rents. Large tenants must predict space needs several years in advance, and small tenants face the challenge of managing quickly changing space needs. It is important to recognize sublease space in assessing supply. Shadow space, which is defined as the difference between the vacant and available space, cannot be considered stable income. TIs, or tenant improvements, depend upon tenant needs, layout, furnitures, and finishes. Tenant improvements and leasing costs tend to be extremely lumpy, which in turn leads to uneven cash flows. And the reason for the lumpiness is that those only occur when a lease expires. And because the leases are long term, you typically don't, on an average year, don't have any leases that are expiring, and thus the need to pay tenant improvements or leasing costs. This is an example of what's called a stacking plan. It's an office that I purchased in Boston, Massachusetts, and what it shows is the physical floors and where the tenants are located. Who the tenants are typically will show what the square footage is, how large their exposure is, and when the leases come due. And what you typically do is you take a look by year. Look over here, this is 2007 going all the way up to 2018. You'll take a look at how much space expires, and that gives you sort of an indicator of risk. And we can see with this building here, 10 Post Office, that in the first 3 years, there's not a whole lot of rent roll occurring, so there's not much risk. But in the fourth year, it looks like about almost a quarter, about 26% of all the square footage comes up for renewal. So from a property owner perspective, you want to be working and talking to these tenants that expire 4 years out to make sure that you know whether they're going to renew or not. And if they're not going to renew, then you're actively looking to replace them with somebody else. So this is a bar chart and line chart of the office vacancy rate. And what we can see here, the vacancy rate's in this sort of neon green. Certainly we can see this is COVID. Actually, the vacancy rate was doing fairly well, maybe around 12% nationally. As soon as COVID hit and the work from home trend started, you can see vacancy just jumped. And it's sort of continues to increase. Again, a lot of the vacancy that we see in the office market is being driven by the work from home trend. A lot of people who are capitalizing these deals, either from an equity or debt perspective, are very nervous about potentially what's going to happen, because this seems like a societal trend. It's not just sort of a fad that was here a couple of years during COVID and then went away. And people are having to readjust what they think the values of properties are, because it's difficult to find tenants, and if you can, because there's so much more supply of space than demand, the rent rates are pretty soft. So this is one way that people take a look at how much the work from home trend is affecting office. And this is a back to work barometer made by Castle Security Systems. And it starts sort of during the COVID period. And what it shows is it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10 of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States, from an office perspective, where their occupancy was pre-COVID, and then COVID, how far it dropped, and where it is currently. And this is as of the end of basically 2022. And you can see even the market that's bounced the back most, which is Austin, is still only about 50% of the people that were going into the office before COVID are actually coming back to the office again. And again, this is tracked through security swipes. Oftentimes there'll be badges that a security system for a security system that is in place at the office. And what they do is they count badge swipes. And so based upon the badge swipes, what this shows is that even at the end of 2022, most of the metropolitan areas have not bounced back any greater than 50% of actual occupancy of office buildings in compared to their pre-COVID numbers. So here is a list of some of the largest office owners in the US. And again, these folks have large equity stakes in buildings, and probably pretty worried about how those values are going to turn out with this work from home phenomenon. And lastly, we'll end with the historic returns and variance as a proxy for risk for the office property type. Again, our numbers start at the beginning, or basically at the end of 1978, and go all the way out until about 2023. And you'll notice that there's a lot of up and down, so there's a lot of variability. You can see even macro trends. The returns are down, then they bounce up a little bit, then they go down. They really take a hit during the Great Depression or the Great Recession in 2009 and 10, and returns are sort of trending downward now. So the average total return over this whole period is about 1.99, so a little less than 2%. If you compare that to the other property types we've seen, this is a little bit less than the other property types, but take a look at that variance. That's much higher than what we have seen from the other property types. So you're getting less and there's more risk.